A couple of brief housekeeping points to mention. You'll notice that everybody's on mute. Please do keep your microphone switched off for the duration of the webinar, along with your cameras, just to save on the internet bandwidth. We'll have enough time at the end for questions, so please do, as we go through the webinar, put your questions into the chat feature within Teams. And at the end of the session, we'll do our best to get around everybody and answer as many questions as possible. Those that we cannot answer, we'll do our best to follow up at the end via email, and hopefully we'll have a very interesting session with today's webinar. So on to introductions. We have a good team with us today, and I will hand over to Liz to introduce herself and the rest of the team.
Well, hi everyone, and thanks for joining. So my name is Elizabeth Stevens. I'm a Senior Environmental Health Officer, and I'm currently the Lead Officer for Air Quality at Sandwell Council. And part of my team, I've got Sophie, so I think she'll introduce herself next.
Thanks, Liz. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Sophie, and I do work for Liz, and I'm an Environmental Improvement Officer at Sandwell Council. And on to David.
Leaves me, yeah. So Dave Green, I work at EarthSense. Sort of across the last 10 years, I've worked in sector of air quality with different hats in consultancy and product specialisms. I now work on the commercial team at EarthSense as a business development manager.
So I'll start us off with kind of painting the picture of what the situation in Sandwell is. So for those of you who don't know, Sandwell is a borough just to the west of Birmingham. It's a relatively small borough split into 6 different sections, you can see there on the map. And in 2005, Sandwell was found to be breaching the national standards for nitrogen dioxide in about 23 areas across the borough. And this led to the declaration of an air quality management area for the entire borough, and that still maintains to this day. In 2019, there are 7 areas still exceeding out of the 23 original ones for nitrogen dioxide. So obviously that's a great improvement, but there's still work to be done in Sandwell. And both particulate matters are above World Health Organization guidelines. So this is something that we're really prioritising at the moment. And it's also interesting to note that of the 72 areas outside of London with levels of PM 2.5 considered dangerous, only Leicester and Sandwell are actually outside of London. So this is our monitoring situation before 2021 and before we started working with EarthSense. So we had 123 sites with NO2 diffusion tubes, which is what the map on the top right is showing. So all of those blue locations are where we have tubes. So 165 are in total. Some of them we have co-located. And then we have 5 continuous air quality monitoring stations. So that's what the green stars are representing in the bottom right corner. We have quite a good spread. They're mainly prioritising hotspots and areas that we know have air pollution issues in Sandwell, but we have a pretty good picture of what air pollution is like in Sandwell.
Thanks, Sophie. So I guess the problem, like many local authorities, is in Sandwell that we do all this monitoring, but we're struggling to make this pollution, the air pollution all around us, visible. And we really need to raise public awareness in Sandwell about air pollution. It is an invisible killer. So what our challenge really was, and what we really wanted to do, was help people understand 3 fundamental things really about air pollution in Sandwell. So firstly, why air pollution is just so damaging to health. What are the actual mechanisms of air pollution and what impact does it have on your body? We then wanted to really get people to understand how they could protect themselves. We don't just want to scare people, we want to give them choices and options about how they can protect themselves from direct impacts from local air pollution. And then obviously what we really want to be able to do is to help people to understand how they can be part of the change in reducing it. So what actions can they take as individuals and as groups through behavioural change to have a positive impact on air pollution. Obviously funding is always an issue for us to do any campaigns or to try and get these kind of messages out to people. So DEFRA really our go-to for looking for funding as a local authority, and each year they do offer air quality grants. So when we were looking back in 2020, thinking about putting an application in, we had to meet the criteria for a Zephyr air quality grant at that time, and these were the rules then. So obviously they change every year, but back in 2020 the rules were, if we wanted a grant, we had to make improvements to air quality. We had to benefit the local area, so demonstrate what was going to be the result of our efforts for improving local air quality. These efforts had to demonstrate benefits within the next couple of years, so fairly short-term impact, but also result in longer-term behavioural change. They had to align with the clean air strategies, that's the 2019 government strategy, and be innovative and show best practice. So you can't just reel out the same kind of project that's been done before. For example, say working with schools is being sort of done and not done and dusted, but it's been repeated all over the country, and they were looking for something. We knew they were looking for something a bit different. Next slide. Thank you.
So the team came up with the idea of working with faith centres as an innovative solution to the problem. So why faith centres is something that we get asked a fair amount about this project. In Sandwell, there is a really strong faith community. The attendance for faith centres in Sandwell is higher than average in the UK. And they are community-focused organisations, and we were looking for a community-focused approach. So it just seemed to fit all of the boxes. There's also shared beliefs along all major religions about an element of environmental stewardship and looking after the environment and protecting the planet and the people who live on it as well. And we thought that we could capitalise on these beliefs and kind of enhance that with the project that we were looking for. Also, I think COVID taught us that trusted messengers are really, really important, and the learning that we learned as a public health department throughout the vaccination campaign applied for this as well. So using trusted faith leaders to have messages about scientific things like air pollution and environmental matters were really, really useful for getting out to the wider community. They'd much rather hear it from their faith leader than a councillor or someone working for the council. So it does cover a wide range of population demographics as well. Any age range and all ethnicities attend some form of faith centre. So we were making sure that we were contacting as many people as possible in this campaign. It's inclusive and representative in people that don't always have a voice in the conversations about issues like this. And the centres are located in all reaches of Sandwell as a borough. And the number of attendees, as we said, is incredibly large for Sandwell for faith centres.
So we put together a project proposal for Zephyr, and we split it into 2 years. So in year one, which actually began with all the procurement, etc., it didn't really take off till October 2021 and is going to finish December of this year. And in that first year, we wanted to work with 8 different faith centres. We produced an air quality questionnaire for baseline knowledge and behaviour, because obviously if you don't know where you're starting from, it's very hard to demonstrate any change. We also then acquired, or so we wanted air quality monitors to be located at the nearest busy road to each centre, ideally within 1 kilometre of the centre. They could choose where they wanted them, but we encouraged them to put them at least where there would be some traffic that would pick up some traffic emissions. We gave them all a TV screen as well, a large TV screen which will show the real-time air quality data that was coming from the air quality monitor, in this case the Zephyr. We also provided them with an air quality toolkit. So this not only provided them with the science behind air pollution, so some basic understandings which Sophie produced, but also ideas about how they can protect themselves, and also those 3 main things, so science, protection, and what they could do to help reduce air pollution, so behavioural change ideas. But the idea being that they would come up with their own ideas, or pick up on the things that they were interested in as a group or as individuals at that centre. We also offered them council officer support, so air quality staff will be able to help them, as well as public health development officers that work at Sandwell Council, who are also very much part of the public health remit for supporting public health activities, which obviously includes air pollution. And then what we're planning to do is do a repeat questionnaire as well after 12 months, which will basically assess knowledge and behaviour change. And then faith centres, we're asking them to share their experience and report on successes and failures of what they did as a result of this intervention, and really feedback to us as well as a local authority of what we could do better, and what worked as well, so we can replicate that with other communities, whether that's faith communities or it might be schools or other groups meet, etc. So that was the project proposal. We're sort of halfway through, well, more than halfway through that first year now anyway. Then on the next slide, this just shows where the faith centres are that we're working with this year. So the 8 ones, and they're really nicely spread out actually across the borough of Sandwell. We have 6 towns. So because we don't have a city centre, unlike a lot of local authorities. And what's really nice as well is we've got a range of faiths represented here as well. So we've got the Balaji Temple and the Sri Mandir Temple in Rowley, which are both Hindu temples. Then we've got the Sikh Gurdwara, the Muslim mosque in Smethwick, and the Yemeni Community Association, also Muslim, in West Brom. And then we've got the 3 Christian centres as well, St Matthew's and Wesley and St Francis. So we've got a really diverse and interesting mix of faith centres taking part in this programme at the moment. But we are looking for next year as well, but we'll come on to that. And then next year, so January 2023, we're essentially just going to repeat this year 1 again. We're going to relocate the Zephyrs if necessary to the new faith centres. There may be some crossover, they may be geographically close to ones that are already in place, in which case we'll have to move them. But otherwise, that's the plan. They'll be relocated. They'll get a screen in the centre, and then we would have a meeting or conference to share the findings over the 2 years as well. And we were also planning to have one after year 1, which I failed to mention as well. Yeah, so the idea being that the faith leaders can meet together, ideally bring in some of their congregation. We can have some experts as well in the field of air quality to really sort of build on what we've found from working with these centres, and understanding how air quality is perceived by members of the public, people who are not involved in this on a day-to-day basis normally. So we put forward, so that was the project proposal. Obviously I'm talking about it because we are in it now, but we were awarded funding for it, and essentially DEFRA gave funding for 8 air quality monitors, 8 TV screens, so smart TV screens that have to be Wi-Fi based, so that people could so that it could log onto the internet. And then the internet-based air quality dashboard was also was really important, because you need to be able to visualize the results and the data coming through from the Zephyr air quality monitors. So yeah, we were awarded £75,000 for that, and sort of divvied it up along with other resources. And then obviously as a council, we had to fund all the staff time and anything else in addition that we needed to pay for to roll out the project. So EarthSense was so why EarthSense? So obviously EarthSense has got a good reputation with local authorities, and having had worked with other local authorities, we already were very familiar with EarthSense as a company. We didn't necessarily work directly to begin with EarthSense. We worked through Enviro Technology Services, because they're the leading supplier of the equipment, and also understanding what our bespoke needs were for the project, so they could produce basically a turnkey environmental monitoring system for us. So Envirotech is the preferred distributor of the Zephyrs to local authorities. So we worked with Envirotech to explain what we wanted for the project. It was all put into a contract which went out for tender. So it was open for all air quality monitoring companies to bid for it. And Envirotech's bid did actually win the bid based on quite a lot of meeting basically all the criteria that we required. So some really key elements that, you know, regardless of whether, you know, we really liked EarthSense product anyway, we still had to do it on a fair basis and a criteria. But the key things that we asked for, which really at the time no other air quality monitors and monitoring systems were able to supply, was we needed the monitors to be mobile. So we didn't want them to be hardwired in. We wanted to be able to move them around the borough. We knew that we were going to have to move them after a year anyway, and the cost of hardwiring these things in is quite excessive for local authorities. We also needed a dashboard that was going to have a user-friendly interface, so people, members of the public, you know, congregations, we've never had any exposure to air quality information and data, could literally just look at a map with some dots on and understand whether it was good, bad or indifferent with regards to air quality. So the RAG rating, this red, amber, green rating, was really important. When we'd seen that used in Shrewsbury as well, I think there's that dashboard, so we'd seen it used as an example as well, so that was really helpful to see what could be done. And also then it has potential to be used for modelling. We haven't gone down that route yet, but that's something that we're trying to get up to speed with and try to sort of make more use really of all this data and information that is available through EarthSense.
I think handed over to me now, so thanks for that, Liz. And I think it's the next few slides are for us really to just reimpose what EarthSense are, what our products are. And I think it's really important because projects like Sandwell for me really catalyse what we as a company provide as products into meaningful insights, and that's the most important thing for us. So for those who aren't aware, EarthSense we established back in 2016, and we established out of the University of Research, founded by a professor at the time working in air quality. And our ambition is to develop products which just increase the granularity and availability of air quality information for the community. I think having worked in the sector for a long time, there are blanks. You know, there's fantastic data sets out there. They're traceable, they're robust. But I think often data in the air quality domain isn't necessarily always so targeted or doesn't represent exposure data for every person. So the products which we have developed so far are down on the bottom of the screen there. So we have a Zephyr, which is a small form indicative sensor. These have become far more popular in the recent years, especially in the time which I've been working in sector. You're now starting them being built into regulation. There's certifications which are coming out which is appropriate for them, and they're definitely here to stay. We've got MappAir, which is our modelling architecture. So this is our methodology of predicting air quality at ground level, trying to fill in the blanks between monitoring information. And we've got MyAir, which is our web-based data portal. So, you know, how do we share and distribute that information, whether it's for a local authority or a user to have that as their own password protected access, or for sharing information with the community. If you don't mind popping over, Greg, please. I'll just now go into a few little details into each of those products and, you know, try and focus on where we believe ourselves to be novel. So Zephyr, Zephyr is, as I said, a small form indicative air quality monitor. They've been designed to fill in the blanks between reference stations and diffusion tube data. They're there to give indicative measurements and try and help build that picture. You know, their benefits are that they can be placed anywhere. They can provide live data, and they can provide very highly time resolved data. So we go down to 10 seconds. That means that you can start to correlate spikes with things like a bus leaving. And that's information potentially which wasn't there or was very costly or a little bit difficult, as Sandwell have already said, to implement before. Where we probably focus ourselves on is a service which we provide. We have developed the monitor, but we know it's really important for end users to have a service which ensures that they're getting continuous data capture and good data quality across the whole period. So a few points I've got down here. One thing is we're flexible on the pollutants. You know, the focus in the UK is so often NO2 and particulates, but we do have flexible suites of pollutants, more potentially focused towards different applications, industrial applications, maybe indoor applications. We are flexible on power. So as Sandwell has said, having something which can be moved around. We run on solar panels, we can run on mains, and very recently we've implemented an external battery cable. So where either of those isn't really feasible, you can deploy the Zephyr in field with an external battery and potentially get 3 to 4 months runtime out of that. So if you're doing a baseline study, for instance, you could deploy it wherever you need to. A big aspect of ours is remote monitoring. So we have a team of engineering staff here who are continuously evaluating the data. So we have systems in place to pick up on faults, and you know that shouldn't be what I'd be saying, but systems do have faults at times, and in terms of data monitoring, that's the most important thing, is you highlight those issues as quick as possible and you resolve those. So we have automated systems to flag problems where there might be a power failure or there might be a communication failure, something which could lead to there being loss of data. We flag that internally, we raise that with the end client, and we proactively try to manage this service so that you're continually getting as high a data capture as possible. In terms of data quality, you know, this is a region and a growing domain, and there is starting to become more information. There's working on an available specification from DEFRA to try and improve this area. In terms of what we do in calibration, we try to provide the most robust methods we can. So for instance, we run our own reference grade instruments here at DEFRA. Every instrument for us has been through an approval test and a check with that, and every client can have that as a calibration certificate. So there are further QA/QC processes which we can support on top of that, but from the word of us delivering the instrument, it is fully calibrated, and you've got a form of a traceable record of that being referenced against a reference equivalent instrument. And moving back to, you know, ease of mind and peace of mind, this year we've implemented fieldwork. So we've now developed our own fieldwork team. We can install and maintain instruments, and the focus here is to understanding, especially a lot of local authority clients of ours, they are busy, you know, they have fixed budgets. We try to take that onus away from what we provide as data. You leave it to us, potentially we help decide where the monitor goes with you, but from that point forward we install it and we maintain it, and we provide you a data stream from there on out. Next slide, please, Greg. So modelling is something we're probably less well known for. You know, going back to the Zephyr, that's readily used across 70 local authorities. MappAir is really what I see as our modelling architecture. It's a modelling suite which is there to provide high resolution data or exposure data at a global scale. And when I focus into the UK, I see it as we've got slightly different product ranges which we can break those out to. So we have pre-calculated measurements. These are products which are available, easy to say, off the shelf. We've pre-calculated these measurements, we pre-validated them, and clients can digest them however they want. We can provide a report for the numbers, or they can integrate the data through the API. And within these pre-calculated measurements, we've got annualized averages. So this is tracing back to 2015. We have annualized data at a resolution of 100 meters squared for particulates and NO2 across the whole of the UK. We then have live and forecasting feeds. So similar resolution as 100 meters squared across the whole of the UK for NO2 and particulates. And these work on an hourly cadence with a 72-hour forecast on those. The difference between those two we see as annualized averages are really trying to look back at exposure data. We've got clients who are using these for home buyer reports to add information to members of the public buying houses. They want to get an understanding of what air quality is like in that region, and using annualized averages as a quick delivery method which doesn't require any additional modelling. Example for live feed is someone who wants to integrate, you know, targeted localized air quality information into their own development software. This could be for clean route tapping, or it could be we have people who are working with healthcare applications, and they use our information to target guidance and advice to people who might be environmentally sensitive to air pollution. And by us giving them that granular detail means that they can give better targeted advice. We also, on top of this, run custom exercises in the UK, and this is probably more familiar to traditional modelling, where we will look at a region specifically, build up the emissions inventory from that area, and create an asset, so a real lifetime model as an asset for that community where the resolutions are much tighter. And then the plan with that is the community or the public sector use that to integrate with every other system which they've got, really trying to conceptualize what digital twins is. So we can give air quality information, they could integrate it with transport, they could integrate it with healthcare apps, they could integrate it with news feeds, whatever they need. Next slide, please, Greg. And data's only key when you can see it. So we have also developed MappAir. So MappAir is simply our cloud-based, our web-based application for sharing data feeds. It comes in 2 versions. When you procure the other product services from us, you'll receive a password protected user login where you can go on, you can interrogate your own data, you can see diagnostics information about your network, and you can do some forms of analysis and download the information. We then have the public portal as well, which is Sandwell is using in this case, and this is an open URL, publicly available web page which we develop, and we integrate the data sources which are required of the project. We really like this because we think it's creating an open and transparent data sharing for the community. There's elements on it which actually adjust target advice based on the DACI of different measurements, and we let the project we're working with decide which that advice and tailored information is going to be. We've tried to make it as accessible to everyone. So as Liz said, you know, a RAG status, making it as simple as possible, red, amber, green, using the DEFRA DACIs, and as well as bringing in other features which make it accessible, like color scales. So this for us, I think is really important, because making air quality information available to everyone is key. And as Sandwell has really done well on this project, is making sure that they're engaged with it and making sure that they own their data themselves. And I think that is the most important thing with air quality for us to move forward, is to get people engaged in it so that they can act on it. I think that's the end of my slides, and now hopefully I can hand back to Liz and Sophie to explain how we've helped with this project.
Thank you, Dave. So we just wanted to highlight a few examples of the Zephyrs out and about, and the dashboard out and about as well. So as you can see, the screens that were a part of the project and the Zephyrs themselves have been put up around the faith centres, and has had some really great feedback from both the attendees of the faith centres, but also the faith leaders as well, who are taking part in this project and, you know, taking on the time commitment to kind of spread the word about air pollution amongst their respective congregations. So that's also an image in the top left of the toolkit that we're providing them with. And we're just hoping that this is a way that people can really visualize something that is obviously invisible, and that a lot of people don't really think about when they think of something as simple as going to church or going to a mosque. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. So it isn't just a screen in a centre, it's a lot more than that. It's a big part of the community engagement. So a part of the project has been monthly newsletters with a different theme each month, varying from anything from the Faith Network itself. So this is one that we did in March about a tree planting event that happened as a result of the project, but also anything from wood burners and onto traffic. Installations, so the following slide will have some photos of some installations that we've put up. The Balaji Temple held a full day called Sandwell Breathes, and they had speakers come in and talk about air pollution to their congregation, as well as some councillors and some key members of staff as well. We've had air quality talks at pretty much all of the community centres at this point, as well as other community venues. talking to just the wider community. So maybe not just people who attend the faith centres, but it spreads via word of mouth. And I think people are really interested, not only in air quality, but in the dashboard as well, because everyone can view it on their phone at home. So we've done a lot of online seminars and meetings about the different types of air pollution as well, and things that people can do to combat on their own. We've planted over 400 trees at the Balaji Temple. They had a lot of land there. And on the back of this project, they were really interested to see what they could do on an individual scale to make a difference. And that resulted in a lot of trees going in. Also, another thing that the mosque has decided to do is car-free Fridays. So they have their 2 p.m. prayers on a Friday, which normally it's an absolute chock-a-block car park of trying to get in and out of their faith centre. So they've opted to do car-free Fridays. Those who aren't able to be car-free due to disabilities or any other physical impairments, they carpool on Fridays. We've also had litter picks as a result of this, although not directly linked to air pollution. I think it's really important to have people be mindful of the environment, and it's really widened up not just air pollution, but I think people's thought process around what they're doing and their interaction with the environment itself. And another centre, another mosque, has also installed some cycle racks as a result of this project in an attempt to lower their personal air pollution. Next slide, please, Greg. So these are some of the installations and projects that have come about as a result of the community engagement. So on the left there at the Balaji Temple is the balloons that illustrate how much air pollution comes out of your car when you idle your engine for a minute. That was very effective, quite eye-catching. I think people thought it was giving away a car initially. They were a bit less excited to learn that it was in fact air pollution. But we had a lot of great interaction with the general public about that, as well as some tree planting, which is highlighted there, and talks in all of the centres and the Sandwell Breathes event as well. So I think it's been a really useful tool that off the back of has really spread the word in the local community about what air pollution is and how people can protect themselves from it.
Okay, so I guess what people are really interested in is the impact and what we've learned so far with this project. So I think firstly, the really nice thing is that faith leaders and their congregations that we've met with have been really keen to engage with us. They're really quite astonished, I think, to see the council coming out and talking to them, which maybe is, which has actually been a real eye-opener that, for years we've been collecting all this data, but really we haven't been sharing it. And, that is something that we need to get better at. Faith community leaders have said that they feel that there is an increase in air quality knowledge, and they're quite positive about what we've done with them, but sort of monitoring and actually gauging everyday behaviour change is much harder. But this was always acknowledged with DEFRA when we put the bid in, that it wasn't necessarily going to be something that we could quantify, but it was, it's all about trying to increase that knowledge and understanding, and hopefully we will be able to gauge some of that through the questionnaire when we repeat it. The project is very reliant on faith leaders to promote and engage, so some centres have been a lot more proactive than others. Coming out of COVID, I think some of them thought that they could commit more time to it than others. So realistically, some centres have been harder to work with than others. It's not that they don't want to, it's just more they get bogged down with doing other things. But it's, that is just life. It's definitely opened up some new discussions as well, which maybe we didn't really think were going to be the priority when we started the project, but more about things like energy efficiency, home heating, insulation, power usage. With the cost of living going up and up and up, this is something that has certainly come into people's minds, and obviously we can make that very clear link between, energy usage generally results in air pollution. Majority of our, energy is still sourced from gas, fossil fuels. So if they can reduce their energy usage, then we're kind of saying, yep, you're doing something to help reduce air pollution. So that's, and lower your bills. So there's a win-win for everybody on that one. We've also been able to make our contacts with regards to air pollution cross over into climate change as well. So making those synergies and those links between, you know, like carbon emissions are often reduced when you reduce your air pollution emissions. So, you know, from internal combustion engines for driving or your heating choices, whatever it might be. So basically making those links as well for people. And then again, that's a win-win as well. So learning so far generally very positive, but high levels of community engagement required and a lot of officer time. So if I have the next slide, Greg, thanks. So I think what we're really learning and what we're going to carry on and do next is provide more direction and support probably than we would have liked to have thought was needed at the beginning. But again, it is always a sort of research and development project, and it's a learning curve. So what we've realized is that data, we want to own the data, but we need to share the data, and we can only do this if we have foot soldiers basically on the ground sharing this data. So we are we are interviewing for an air quality and climate change officer in the coming days, and this will be a really key member of our team now who will be able to go out and take all this amazing information and share it with our communities, and be hopefully an inspiration along with myself and Sophie. We're not abandoning it, but we just need some more help to get out there and talk to people. We're planning to have an air quality conference in November. So this again is an opportunity to pass on learning with the existing faith centres to the next set of faith centres that should be taking up the mantle in January. So this will be a great opportunity for passing that information on. We're going to carry on obviously the behavioural change questionnaires, so we can really understand what people have learned from our intervention. And we're really just looking forward to taking all our learning so far and applying it to the new centres with another person to help us, and really just moving it forward. You know, I think you're learning all the time about what works, what doesn't work, what people, you know, what support people really want and need. It's lovely if you think you can just, you know, say, oh, we've told you all about air pollution, here are some ideas, go off and do it. Life doesn't always work like that. People often do need a little bit more support of what they can do, and you know what works and what doesn't. So yeah, that's where we're at now. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much indeed, Sophie and Liz, and thanks, Dave, for that fascinating insight into a very interesting project, which will hopefully leverage some really good insights in behaviour change over the coming months and years. We've got about 20 minutes, I think, for some questions which have been coming in thick and fast, so we'll do our best to get through a good deal of those. I'll work on a first come first served basis. So starting from the top, we had Bill Ellens. Should the combined authority be also taking this line of action across the main towns within the combined authority in Walsall due to the issues with the M6 junction 10? Don't know whether Liz or Sophie could just provide a brief comment on that one, if that's a part of the plans.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, the West Midlands Combined Authority are actually at this very moment looking at trying to develop something to go across the whole of the West Midlands region, and yeah, basically they were even mentioned the DEFRA, this specific project, as being a good example of how this could be done. So rolling out this kind of idea for every local authority in the West Midlands, but it's all in the mixing pot at the moment, as far as I understand.
Fantastic. Thanks, Liz. Question here from Gary Teixeira. Hi, Liz. Well thought out strategy for trusted messaging and knowledge sharing with community. Are you able to share the AQ questionnaire used to assess the baseline knowledge for communities?
I think so. Yeah, I'll have to check my boss, but yeah, I don't think. I mean, it's out there. Yeah, it was online for a while, but it's come down because we did it. What I failed to mention was we did actually have to do it in, I think, 8 languages as well. So we had to get it translated into 8 languages. We originally only planned to do it online, but then we realised that was actually excluding quite a lot of our demographic. So we did do paper copies as well, and we had like post boxes in the faith centres for people to post them back in as well. So trying to make it as inclusive as possible. So yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. We can get a copy sent out.
Fantastic answers. Question from Natalie Holdsworth here. Do EarthSense analyse the data to account for drift for Sandwell and the faith centres? Maybe I can come to Dave for an answer on that one.
Yeah, I think you're picking up on an important aspect here of sensors, and you know what's in the literature is, yes, there's an element of drift correction which we have within our processes. We also have several different systems working in the background to try and remove outliers and look for erroneous data within the data. Moving beyond that, you know, I think this is an important aspect which DEFRA is looking to close the gap of providing robust guidance around the area of how to run ongoing QA/QC processes on sensors like ourselves. There are different methods. Some of those are more traditional, using a transfer standard or a comparison against reference station. Some of them are more novel, using sort of remote calibration techniques. So answer your question, yes, there's elements, and we've got good data to back up that our drift fits in with what we know and understand to be sensible. Wider afield, large scale question, which would probably create a large amount of debate here today.
Thanks, Dave. Going on down through the questions, we've got Jeff Broughton. The map shows green spots based on current measurements. How did the faith centres see which areas are exceeding during 2022? Maybe come to Liz and Sophie for that one.
Okay, I think Jeff was asking a bit further down as well about yeah, the fact that it's based on, normally we look at annual levels rather than analyze. So whereas we're working on the DEFRA scale, aren't we, for air quality? I'm not very good on the technical, but the levels have been agreed for what's seen as being like low exposure, medium and high for a person at any particular time, rather than annualizing the data. So it's an indicator of levels that would be harmful. So if it's, you know, if it's showing green, then that would say that you can go out and do your normal exercise and, you know, the air quality is good. Whereas if it's amber and you suffer from, you know, any pre-existing breathing difficulties, then you would want to avoid, you know, going near busy roads and do anything that would anything too exerting, like jogging or high level of physical activity. And then if it's bright red, then people know that that's then that they should avoid going and doing any kind of physical exertion, regardless of whether they have any pre-existing breathing or health conditions. So yeah, it's an indicative scale. It's not an annualized average for people to be working off, and that's the thing. It's real time. You know, we have our monitoring stations that will give us, you know, and Jeff does all our work for that anyway. So for our continuous monitoring stations, and that data is calibrated and annualized, and so it's a different. We're just kind of, it's a bit apples and pears really for us. It's just trying to give people an indication of what their local air quality is like at that specific time, rather than what it's like over the whole year.
Do you mind if I add to that as well?
Yes, absolutely. I'm struggling.
No. I think it's such an important aspect, and there's probably a few like caveats I'll work around this. Like, it's one, I think Zephyr's, you know, we shouldn't be used, the data from indicative models shouldn't be used to report against annual means anyway, because they aren't an approved reference method. The point of sensors, and I think people often get this wrong, the point of sensors is to give you more information. You know, it's where are the peaks and the troughs, what is happening over time. If you put an incentive in, has it had an effect? So I think there's that importance, Jeff, which I know you will understand. So there's that importance of segregating against that. I think as well, I saw down in the chat, there's no, documented safe limit for pollutants. We're always chasing a lower limit. So I think limits for me are always, they're there for strategy and tracing over time and legislation. But actually, when you're talking about human exposure, everyone responds differently. So there's no set safe limit where you will have no negative impacts on human health. Going into some of the statuses which we do, we actually offer a DACI, which is what I would probably say is more aggressive than DEFRA's. So we do also offer information which is, as you're encroaching the limits, you're getting more amber and red statuses, because again, for us, we try to work towards the WHO guidelines a little bit more. And coming back to Sandwell's thing, this is my opinion. I have to be careful on this, but I think a lot of time for humans, my exposure, for instance, I think annual means have their importance, but I don't spend my life at one location. Quite often I'm going and moving around locations. So for me, that loading at that location is quite important. An example could be a certain school which is away from, is say fairly background urban, which doesn't see a lot of source throughout the day, will see massive loadings at peak points in the day when there is the highest capacity of people at those locations. So it brings it back to this real world exposure data of when people are there, what is that exposure? And I think that is the ambition, is just to try and inform people in the simplest way so that they can understand it without getting too complex into the detail of what air pollution is and all the legislation around it. So yeah, that's my opinion. Hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Dave. Skipping down to Duncan Laxon here, our suspect erroneous data, especially if too high, automatically removed from the reporting on the website to avoid worrying people. Maybe that's one, Dave, you can comment on briefly.
Yeah, so like I say, we've got systems in place which is trying to flag a lot of this data. So we will try to remove really high erroneous data. There is, like I say again with indicative, that there will be elements where our uncertain boundaries on measurements will give a higher reading, and without completely removing all of that data at every single point, that will be integrated.
Thanks, Dave. Catherine Miller, how many other local authorities, councils are running similar AQ monitoring projects? Possibly again for you, Dave.
Sorry, I was reading the question. Could you repeat?
Just from Catherine Miller, how many other local authority councils are running similar air quality monitoring projects?
Oh God, I think from our perspective, we're working with about 70 local authorities. I think DEFRA grants, us and other suppliers, there's bounds of these every single year going on. But I would say my experience is telling me that almost every larger borough level, every district is considering, especially these sort of behavioural change campaigns. And I think, yeah, it just plays to the benefits of let's get the community thinking about it. Like I can just pick one worry point I have is energy crisis. A lot of people this year are going to be burning different types of wood, which they can get their hands on in their log burning stoves. That's a behavioural campaign. We need to change and educate people about the negative effects of those. So there is a whole world of this sort of like ground roots up of air quality, which I think a lot of people are now getting on board with. Lovely. And maybe I'll pass it back to Liz and Sophie, unless if you know any of the other people who have reached out to you or you're working with.
I don't, similar to what Liz was saying earlier, definitely this year's applications for the DEFRA bid are focusing on behavioural change. And that seems to be a key aspect of what they're looking for now, especially with emphasis on particulate matter, so things like domestic burning. So I think going forward, we will see more and more similar projects like this come forward and hopefully get a lot more public attention as well. And
there's, I'll add, and it's everyone I speak to, and I fire it over to them, so I'm a broken record, but there was a fantastic article in Nature which a PhD from SEPA produced recently, and it was all focused around behavioural change and air quality measurements. And the importance of not just giving data, the importance of doing the work which Liz and Sophie are doing, is actually going into the community, training and educating, and creating it as an idea that people can get on board with, rather than just keeping their distance because they think it's scientific gobbledygook. So yeah, maybe we'll pop that in the chat, because I think that's something everyone should read.
Yeah, that's a really interesting segue into some good questions coming here about behaviour change. One from James Ferguson Moore and another from Enda Hayes about have we, from your point of view, Sophie and Liz, any meaningful behaviour change as a result of the project? Have citizens started to act on the data that they're seeing, and connecting that with behaviour and social practices, i.e. sort of travel to work, shopping and leisure time? Have you started to get a sense of actual quantifiable behaviour change coming in as a result?
Yeah, we've definitely had positive feedback. I can't say it's quantifiable at the moment, but anecdotally being told, yeah, like parents who have started walking their kids to school, tried car-free Fridays, thinking more, people tend to say just thinking more about the environment and their impact on it. Certainly talking to people as well about domestic burning, wood burning stoves, that's been a massive eye-opener, I think, for a lot of the groups that we've talked to. Had no idea, because it's sold to people as an environmentally sustainable way to heat your home, and yeah, are absolutely horrified by the impact that an open fireplace or a wood burning stove can have on indoor air quality. So yeah, but again, the messaging just needs to be so much more powerful, and it's very frustrating, because I feel there's messaging that really should be coming out from central government that supports this work, and we're just kind of tinkering at the edges. So it's, yeah, we can only do what we can do, and we're hoping that this small project will snowball and encourage other people to do, and other local authorities, and we're already seeing the West Midlands Combined Authority going, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe we should be doing something like that, which is, that's what you want people to sort of pick up, and we don't mind people copying it, that's great, or coming up with something of a similar vein with other community groups or other institutions, or whoever it might be. We just need that sort of snowballing effect to encourage others to join in, because that's the only way we make change. We're not going to do it just in Sandwell. Even if every faith group in Sandwell decided to do behaviour change, it's not going to change the world. Whereas if we manage that across the country, that might have a little bit more of an impact. So we want the message to get out there.
Thanks, Liz. One here from Paul Owen about how you implement changes based on the output from the monitors that are installed, i.e. traffic flow changes, etc. Don't know whether Liz, Sophie, you could comment on that one at all.
We haven't. Yeah, I mean, that wasn't the project design when we designed it. I know that's something that could be done with the data, but we, where we chose to put the face centres have chosen to put their monitors is really just, it's a bit random, and it's not necessarily next to major traffic routes or traffic lights or whatever. But I do know that is something that you do with other local authorities, and looking at signal optimization and that kind of potential. But again, that's the great thing about these relatively low cost movable air quality monitors, is that you have that option to do many things with them. If you think of a project, you can probably fit the EarthSense Zephyr around it, so to give you what you want.
Thanks, Liz. Question here from Abu Salim about air quality models and how they support the decision support system. Again, maybe Liz, Sophie, you could comment on whether you've used much of the modelling that's included as part of the package anyway, and whether you've driven any insights and infill from the context that's not being directly monitored by the Zephyrs.
Yeah, so the modelling, I know there's a huge amount of stuff that we can do with the modelling. I have used it on occasion for our planning, so it's not directly linked to the Faith project, but yeah, we have. So For example, we've had a planning application in for a development right next to the M5 viaduct, where there for potential residential development, and it's really clear on the modelling, and that's been shared with our planners, that shows that, you know, the levels of nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter in that particular area are significant, regardless of what the air quality assessment says from the professional. So but it's so visual, so it's such an easy visual thing. So if you look on the MappAir, you can see, you know, at certain times of day anyway, it's like all the way along the motorway, like the M5 that runs through Sandwell, and some of the main A roads as well. You can see the dispersion of nitrogen dioxide across areas, and you can see, you know, how it tracks and moves, and that's just a really good visual tool for us to use with, particularly with our planners, because that makes more sense sometimes than just giving them numbers.
Completely agree with that. Thanks, Liz. I think we've got time for possibly one more. Apologies, we're not going to be able to get around all the questions, but we will follow up afterwards. I'll just pick this one out from David Gould. Interesting project. Have you done any work to try and gauge the influence of other non-road based sources? Interesting question. Maybe Liz or Sophie.
Sorry, was it, have we done any other work with non-road based? So not particularly with this project, but we have got 13 other Zephyrs in the area, and we have got one Zephyr in particular that we're using to monitor smoke that's coming from a fire station. As part of it, we have a training centre which has a smokehouse. So that wasn't ever intended as originally as a use for one of the Zephyrs, but actually we relocated it so we could see exactly what the impact is on a local school to this fire station, of which the results are still pending. But yeah, so that should be interesting to see what comes back from that. But that is again the joy of having instant air quality data, you know, that we can, with a machine that we can literally just move around, which just is really helpful. So yeah, I don't know if is that a good enough example?
I think so. So it's okay. It's a nice way to finish off. No, and yeah, just from me, I'd like to say thank you very much again to Liz and Sophie for their time today. Fascinating talk, and thanks to Dave for the EarthSense support, and hopefully that was interesting for everybody who joined today. Thanks for everybody coming on board this afternoon. We'll follow up with answers to any questions we couldn't answer today, along with the recording. And thanks again for your time, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.